Okay, so let's talk about time travel, shall we? It's a really deep subject, but it's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that you're passionate about if you like time travel movies. But there are films that span our generation, span our lifetime, that have tackled this topic. Some are good, some are bad, and we're going to talk about the good. So here are my top 5 favorite time travel movies. Where we're going. We don't need roads. Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Nerd News. I'm your host, Chris Chavis. This is a show created for nerds by a nerd. Hope y'all are staying safe and nerdy. I know I am. Yeah. Now there's something about time travel movies that just get your blood going, right? Get your creativity juices going, and you just enjoy the heck out of these films. It's like something that takes you back through time and has you reminiscing about the good old yesteryear, or the things that possibly could happen, but probably not, but possibly could happen, according to Hollywood. But one thing though we all agree on, whenever we see a movie trailer for a film where they talk about time travel or somehow time travel is involved, already mentally you're like, alright, I bought tickets already, let's do this. And like I said, this genre is something that could be written insanely well or written very poorly, but, you know, time travel movies, they are amazing, we love them, and I want to tell you about the ones that I enjoy. That's right, my top 5 favorite time travel movies. But before we get into that, you know what we need to do. And if this is your first time here, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit that like, the subscribe, the notification bell to be notified of all things nerd news. So for this list, we are going to cover movies that I enjoy. I've seen multiple times. And they're not listed in any specific order. They're just there on the list for you to enjoy. But, you know, I think if we're going to talk about time travel, we need to start this list off with a classic. A film that goes back to our childhood, a film that we can look back on when we're about 50 years old and say, I remember when I saw that movie. Too much? And I'm talking about Disney's The Flight of the Navigator. So The Flight of the Navigator came out in 1978. Wait, is that right? It's about a boy who falls down a hill, hits his head on the ditch. When he wakes up, he realizes he's 8 years in the future. 8 years in the future. That's some crazy stuff. He then has these grand adventures with this intelligent, wisecracking ship that talks to him. And the ship, by the way, is voiced by Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, that guy. If you haven't seen this movie, it is on Disney+. So if you have Disney+, check it out. You'll like it. I mean, this is a fun, charming movie that deals with family, it deals with belonging somewhere, and self-identity. And one thing that I remember from this film is the ship. Now, the ship, it looks like a giant silver walnut, and every time I see a walnut at the store, or at Chris's party, some of those walnuts, I instantly think of Flight of the Navigator. And one thing from a kid that I remember from that movie intensely, besides the actual ship, was the creatures that lived in the ship with him. You know, the ones that he collected so that he can, you know, he saves them, return them back to the planet. Some of them are really cool, and I want to see a backstory. Oh, nay. I would love to see a spin-off on some of those characters. But Flight of the Navigator, if you guys haven't had a chance to see it, or if you have seen it, then you know how special this movie is. It still holds up to this day. Even the graphics, you know, the CGI is still there. It's not that bad. But check it out, Flight of the Navigator, you're on the list. Next up, we're going to move from a Disney classic all the way to a creepy movie in that of Donnie Darko. Now, this movie came out in 2001, and it stars the lovable, the charming, and talented Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, he's a wee lad who's a little bit younger than... A lot younger than he is now. He's a little bit older now than he was then. Now in this film, he narrowly escapes a tragic accident of a plane engine falling into his bedroom, if you will. He's a troubled teen who, ever since he escaped that crazy accident, he always sees his visions of this rabbit. This really just creepy, off-putting rabbit. This film made the list because it's a cult classic, it's creepy, and it has a really interesting way that they explain time travel in this movie. Plus, it was, I think every movie on this list, this one had the smallest of the budgets, and so for a smaller budget movie, you get, I don't know, sometimes smaller independent films focus on the story a little bit more, and it has a little bit more detail into the story than they would, you know, spending a ton of money on visuals. I mean, don't get me wrong, the visuals in Donnie Darko were great for the time. It was 2001. But it was just a really unique, quirky movie that you had to watch twice. I did. I had to watch it the second time and be like, oh, yeah, I get it now. But Donnie Darko, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a great movie. You're on the list, Donnie. And you know, of course, if you guys have been to this channel, you know that I have to include a comic book movie in this list. I mean, do you see my backdrop? They're always it's like you guys don't even know me. And I'm talking about, of course, Marvel's Endgame. Now, Endgame is the massive follow-up to Infinity Wars that puts an end to this ginormous 10-year story that Marvel has been talking about. It's amazing. The Avengers go back in time to obtain the Infinity Stones before Thanos gets them, you know, before he can do the... No. Rude. Now, this film took time travel and gave it a really fun facelift. I mean, we already, up to this point, we have followed the Marvel movies for 10 years, right? So we have developed a relationship, a fond for all these characters. And to see all of them, you know, culminate into this one beautiful movie, it was just a cool visual, you know, a cool ojos. It was a cool feast for the eyes, is what I'm saying. Ojos, eyes. And my favorite aspect of this movie with the time travel is it was a nice also callback to 10 years of the films that we've been watching. And a good example of that is when they went back to the Battle of New York, where the first Avengers movie happened. It was kind of cool to kind of be like, you know, to recall what we loved back then, and then to see it come, you know, see where it is now, and then the two worlds kind of combined. It was just a really good, fun popcorn movie that, you know, it was a great cap, pun intended, Captain America. It was a great cap to a 10-year run, and I'm excited to see where Marvel goes after this. In fact, I think I might rewatch that tonight. Yeah, that's happening. Now, we can't do a time travel movie episode without talking about the one movie, man, the one movie that just pops you in your mind when you think of time travel. What is it? Tell me. Yeah, you got it. Back to the Future, baby. Bam! Nobody calls me chicken. Now, this 1985 Robert Zemeckis classic, I mean, this film goes down in history as one of the just most iconic movies of all time, and one of the most quotable movies of all time. And I have mentioned once or twice that Back to the Future 2, in my opinion, is the best script ever written. It follows the first movie perfectly, and it just ties that universe in so just seamlessly. Like, it all works perfectly together. It's all balanced. And every aspect of Back to the Future 1 and 2, I don't talk about 3 because 3 didn't happen. It didn't happen, I'm sorry. There was not one aspect of this movie where I question the time travel ethics, if you will, and even the flux capacitor. It's real. It works. It makes sense. I get it. And it's funny because if you think about Back to the Future, you also go back to Endgame because they reference Back to the Future in Endgame. I mean, Back to the Future has set the mark for all movies going forward when they talk about time travel. It's a movie that should never be remade. It's just the perfect time travel movie. I think every movie on this list is great, and I love them all, but Back to the Future, it's that cherry on top of the future mountain, you know, the time travel mountain. It's just there at the top, and everything else just trickles down from there. So everyone that worked on Back to the Future, God bless your soul, because that movie is just bellissimo. And the last film on this list is a movie that I adore. When I saw it in the theaters, I fell in love with this movie, and that is Ray Johnson's Looper. This 2012 futuristic action sci-fi movie starring Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt graced our screens, and we were in heaven. The movie is set in 2074, which we kind of wish that time would fast forwarding it past the current year that we're in, but you know, that's a topic for a different day. And in this movie, when the mob wants to get rid of someone, they do it in a very unique and, what's the word I'm looking for, illegal way. The target is sent in the past where hired guns are waiting for his arrival, and then, you know. This film takes time travel and makes it into like an illegal crime type feel to it, like a film noir, and it's a great, unique way to use time travel to tell your story. Essentially, it's time-hopping assassins. And if I just said that and the actors that were in it, you'd be intrigued, wouldn't you? The film gets really, really deep and very interesting when you have to go back in time and kill your older self. Like, that's a trip right there. That's some, like, Inception type, you know what I mean? And this is a brand new take on an awesome genre to get into. But Looper is just, it was a unique story, one that you really got invested and involved in, and especially seeing Joseph Gordon-Levitt play a younger Bruce Willis. It was just great acting, and the prosthetics, man, he looked just like a young Bruce Willis. It was weird. But if you haven't seen Looper, Ray Johnson is a great writer and director. This was the first movie I've seen of his. I will see more. Granted, he did a Star Wars movie and it wasn't that good, but it's okay. You gotta make flops in order to make hits, kid, if you're gonna survive in this industry, kid. Come on. But guys, that is my list for my top 5 favorite time travel movies. Now, are there movies on this list that I left out? Let me know in the comments below. I want to know what movies you enjoy. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. I truly appreciate your time. I really hope that you watch some of these movies. If not, if anything, watch Flight of the Navigator just to start it. Or if you haven't seen Back to the Future, forget everything I said. Watch Back to the Future, because are you living under a rock? But thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, if you know of a sports almanac that happens to be real, message me.